It is well known that we in general are most comfortable with things that are familiar. And yet, even if change is recognized to be productive and beneficial, it takes insight and energy to transition our thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors. Bottom line, it's human to resist change. And yet, in a sense, this is precisely what is often required of our patients to heal. Whether in the form of modifying a lifestyle or unraveling a resultant compensation, we as therapists, despite our enormous goodwill, are as a result often encountering resistance. At this point in your career, you might be asking yourself, was something as magnificent as healing intended to be so difficult, such an uphill climb? I personally don't believe so, and therefore, what we are about to reveal to you is intended to be a replenishing perspective, an empowering capacity for both you as a professional and for your patients striving to restore health. What is integral to this message and consistent, dating to the first day our patients began recognizing symptoms, is that their reflexive selves began resisting the change of becoming impaired, tapping into what would carry them through their life obligations in hopes that the symptoms would somehow just go away, and in doing so, surpassing what was most often still good and merely in need of healing. Folks, the good news is, what is best in our patients and merely in need of healing is still present, always has been, just covered up by the pain avoidance fears and resultant compensations. So please relax for a few minutes as we reveal a fresh path of truly restoring the health of motion naturally. As we learned early in our professional training, there is a wealth of clinical value to be gleaned from the analysis of our patients' functional movements, whether in reaching and grasping or transfers and gait, to a whole host of personal life requirements. We have become adept at utilizing our patients' repertoire of movement production as a reflection of what currently exists, as well as the vessel which will ultimately carry forward our efforts to restore one's optimal personal capacities. And yet, despite our proficient ability to find consensus among professionals in correlating dysfunctional movement patterns with contributing underlying impairments, we often tend to abruptly diverge to our preferential therapeutic interventions as a means of ultimately fulfilling a desired change. Nothing necessarily wrong with an individualized approach. In fact, it reflects the autonomy we enjoy as professionals, as well as lending to our creativity in fulfilling diversity of need. My concern, however, as we are progressively absorbing the limitations insurers are imposing on our professional prowess, wouldn't we be better served, when opportunity presents itself, to instead refine our delivery of care just a bit by truly working smarter for tomorrow's opportunities rather than struggling to work harder for yesterday's limits? I'm not sure about you, but for me, laboriously investing time and resources in appealing for an extension of care or attempting to secure an already earned reimbursement is taking a toll. As such, I offer you the following empowering scenario for a ready-to-go implementation with your shoulder and more global upper extremity patients. I will reveal what already exists neuromuscularly in support of movement health and physical capacity, and share what yet remains untapped as a therapeutic resource, providing the means of therapeutically communicating and literally syncing with the principal source of what orchestrates a recovery of healthy motor control. In other words, preserving your knowledge and skills in either unraveling the identified impairments or otherwise nurturing healing at each stage of recovery, while adding the ability to effectively integrate your gains immediately back into the moving vessel of our patient's living existence, making your efforts at each stage of recovery a lasting impression as it pertains to restoring movement health and beyond. In this quest of achieving a more in-depth and thorough healing, it is vital for us to first remind ourselves of the full impact of our patients' presentations. As a global existence, the resilience of our patients to persevere in the face of physical strife on any functional level is largely invested in both taxing and degrading motor compensations concurrently with extensive yet subtle autonomic reflections of anxiety and pain avoidance fears. Expanding our capacities to communicate at such a depth is pivotal, not only to restore our patients' greatest needs, but in so doing, awakening of our fullest capacities to influence healing. Okay, first let's build the foundation. So what began with our post-surgical patients as passive range of motion with the UE Ranger's stable platform to resolve pain, enhance circulation, and foster proprioception within the progressive recovery of range of motion, now progresses with the new UE Ranger Natural Flex, which was specifically designed with an innovative, pliable material to serve as a therapeutic vessel to provide both the facilitating stimuli while simultaneously delivering on the assist. To bring these capacities to light, as we so often do, utilizing the movements of our own bodies either to teach, learn, or confirm, I will ask you to begin from a resting position, either in sitting or standing, to simply initiate an intentional reach in any direction, yet preferably towards a target, real or imagined. For example, as in reaching to shake someone's hand or reaching for a drinking glass. Now let me ask you to observe within the very initiation towards these intended targets, utilizing your mind's eye proprioceptively to recognize, regardless of the command you provide yourself, that there is an immediate reflexive recruitment of your hand to essentially lead in pursuing the intended target. Please repeat this a few times as slow as necessary to recognize there is no natural progression towards any intended target, real or imagined, except by way of the involvement of your hand. Now, let me ask you from a sitting position to place the center of your palms over the center of your thighs. Refine the position such that your thenar eminence is in direct contact with the medial portion of your relaxed quadricep. Now, I will ask you to initiate an intention of moving your upper extremity into the resultant empty can position within the scaption plane. Recognize by the setup position your intended reach is now lightly opposed from fulfilling its pursuit. Note with the application of the UE Ranger Natural Flex, which provides both an accommodating impression and resultant resisting opposition dependent on that initiated from central command proximal to distal. It is essential that this resistance is present yet extremely light, comparatively the equivalent of a grade 1 manual mobilization force, or, as you may have learned, gently bending the mosquito's knees. What we are essentially opposing is what we commonly refer to as eye-hand coordination. While this intention is generated centrally, the opposition is experienced distally through the thenar eminence, which in turn evokes a reflexive neuromuscular recruitment proximally to targeted components of the rotator cuff, such as, in this case, the supraspinatus. As such, with the UE Ranger, this facilitation is immediately available to provide a force couple synergistically in coordination with the varying heads of the deltoid muscle depending on the plane of execution. Conversely, if we snug up the hypothenar eminence to the lateral quadriceps and initiate the intention towards shaking someone's hand, and through slight opposition we can similarly evoke a reflexive response of the external rotators. While in this context of showing you on your own bodies, it might look like no more than producing an isometric contraction of the respective muscles mentioned. What is most important to recognize here is most of our shoulder patients, surgically repaired or non-operative by necessity or by choice, is their coordination of motor recruitment has been subverted by the historical necessity to compensate with larger and stronger muscles. For our patient with the supportive means to facilitate both a feed-forward intention of movement distally while simultaneously orchestrating a feedback amplification of graded motor recruitment proximally, we can utilize an extremely valuable PNF principle known as irradiation, which describes the capacity of enhancing currently compromised motor function throughout an involved synergistic system by vigorously recruiting current components with more proficient muscular activity. That is certainly a headful, but all it is saying is, as we execute a natural initiation of reach proximally, we realize there to be a natural reflexive progression of that movement distally. If we were to minutely resist that distal motion that currently has no inhibition nor weakness to it, then its response would in turn grade a ramping up response proximally, thus recruiting as a force couple another more well-known PNF principle of proximal stability before distal mobility. This system interaction of feeding forward and feeding back is a perpetual loop of communication. As we progress our patients' functional challenges, our recommendations are to work within a therapeutic threshold which essentially recognizes our efforts to be influential of favorable change versus perpetuating compensations. Reverting to pathomechanical motions, such as hiking the shoulder, holding one's breath, or grimacing, are all examples, among others, of evidence of working beyond one's ability to favorably respond. A second guiding principle of progression is the intent and ability of the UE Ranger to grade motor recruitment, which follows the law of the motor unit, fostering neuromuscular-based strengthening by recruiting small motor units progressively to larger ones and in turn restoring the weakest of the weak for optimal strength and endurance recoveries. As we naturally intervene with its activity, we are elevating the value of our intervention to condition neuromuscular coordination versus merely executing reps of random movement production. Providing such a depth of therapeutic influence with the UE Ranger Natural Flex ensures we are properly restoring one's vital shoulder capacities to support the greatest diversity of mobility, enduring the greatest demands, and fulfilling for the long haul. This could not have come at a greater time, given the progressive limitations insurers are imposing on our ability to deliver the quality of care our patients both need and desire. It is always a pleasure to work with you. Please reach out to us with your thoughts, questions, and equipment needs. Be sure to inquire about our program for incorporating these same capacities into your patients' home exercise programs. Recognize we are only in person with our patients for a very small percentage of their waking hours. Properly equipping your patients at home to support both safe and effective influences of healing can reap enormous benefit to your outcomes measurements.